Good morning. Welcome to our Weber County Commission meeting. Today is Tuesday, the 4th of December, 2018. Present today, we have a full quorum. To my immediate right is Commissioner Scott Jenkins. To my left is Commissioner James Ebert, and I'm Commissioner Harvey. Our agenda will be as follows. We'll first have an invocation by one of our great civil attorneys, Brian Barron. Following Mr. Barron, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Eli Johnson. And then the thought of the day will be given by Commissioner James Ebert. We'll go to that point.
Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee at the start of this County Commission meeting to thank Thee for the many blessings that we enjoy. We're grateful for the snow that we've received over the past few days, especially up in the mountains where we need it so badly. We thank Thee for this great country that we live in and all of the freedoms that we enjoy. We ask Thee to bless us during this meeting, that we may have wisdom and help us as we work to make this a better place to live and to work. And this we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple quick thoughts. This is an amazing time of the year. It's a time of reflection. It's a time of blessings. And so just a couple quick thoughts. First is by Winston Churchill. Christmas is a season not only of rejoicing but of true reflection. And Henry Drummond. You will find as you look back at your life that the moments when you have really lived are the moments when you have done things in the spirit of love. We have an amazing season that we're in, filled with a lot of happiness and joy, and it's a great time to reflect back on your life and the blessings that you have. But I would ask you to remember that it's also a very difficult time of the year. We have higher rates of depression and suicide during this season. Many that maybe aren't feeling that their life is where they want it to be struggle, as others are in joyous celebration. And it truly is the time for us to be aware of other people's struggles and trials and be helpful or thoughtful or kind, and to reach out to them in these difficult times for them. Include them in your joyous celebration of the season. And so for us, let's go forward, let's truly enjoy, but let's always have that handout to help those that are in need. There's a lot of different resources that we can use through Weber Behavioral Health and others out there on the internet to help those who are struggling with addiction issues or depression issues. So please take the time to reach out to your neighbors, friends, and your family. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. For those of you in the audience, we have just a few more than normal. Let me explain to you about our commission agenda. We've moved some things around so that public can comment before we make decisions. In the past, we used to make decisions and then we'd allow the public to comment. That was a little disingenuous, so we've changed things around. Coming up here, we'll have a public comment, but then how it works is we'll have consent items, which has to do with the running of Weber County. Following that, we'll have specific action items that we'll talk amongst ourselves on. And then item H are public hearings. So for those of you who have come today that have concern about things that appear on the public hearing or item H, we'll hear those things and then we'll have public comment on those particular things before we take action on them. So that's how the process works. So we'll proceed now to, with that being said, we're to item E on our agenda, which are public comments. So if the public has any questions regarding the consent items or the action items, not necessarily pertaining to the public hearing items, but any of the action items or the consent items, we invite you to come forward and we'll hear those now. If you'll just state your name and the city where you live, limit your comments to 3 minutes. Commissioners, none being heard, we'll move on to item F on our consent items. I'll read those now. Item number 1 is a request for approval of warrants 1621 through 1627 and 434,482 through and including 434,604 in the amount of $4,120,995.19. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $15,335.87. Item 3 is a request for approval of ACH payments to U.S. Bank in the amount of $132,311.33 for purchasing card transactions made through the billing cycle ending November 26, 2018. Item 4 is a request for approval to ratify Weber County Human Resources Policy 6-200, Performance Management. Item 5 is a request from the Weber Morgan Health Department for approval to surplus office equipment. Item 6 is a request from the Weber Morgan Health Department for approval to surplus a white Ford 2002 Windstar van. Item 7 is consideration and action the acceptance of a temporary construction activity easement granted to Weber County by PC Thomas Investment Company, LC. The intent is to grant the county and its contractors the right to temporarily occupy and use the southwest 20 feet of the Thomas's property during the Weber County or the Weber Center parking structure project. There's no cost associated with the county acquiring the easement. Item 8 is consideration and action on the acceptance of a private utility easement granted to Weber County by PC Thomas Investment Company, or Corporation LC. The intent is to grant the county the right to access the permanently and install maintain communication lines on the under and southernmost 20 feet of the Thomas's property. There is no cost associated with the county acquiring this easement. Item 9 is a request for approval of retirement agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Carrie Jakes Schickliff and Brandon Tall. Commissioners, item number 10, because it is a resolution, we'll move that to the last action item on the agenda. So 10 will become item number 7 under item G. So we're looking for discussion on the consent items number 1 through 9. Commissioners, any questions?
Eli, how do we say Carrie's last name? Sukulich. I knew it, but as soon as he botched it so badly, then I couldn't pronounce it. I apologize. And that's a hard one to say. I shouldn't say botched. If I could ask, no one listens to the record, Jim. If I could just ask when we get to Ricky to make sure he really touches on trust and agency in the WACOG sales tax. Oh, sorry, Lynn. I mean, that makes up 94% of that. That's my request anyway.
Thank you. Commissioner Jenkins? None? Great. Lynn, will you go over some of those items 1 through 9 for us today, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Our warrants, we had 130, totaling $4.2 million. The overwhelming majority of that, 82% or $3.37 million, went to the Weber Area County of Governments. It's a sales tax payment and covers a lot of the constructions and roads and special projects that happen within the county, in conjunction with all the Weber Area Council of Governments, which collaboratively decide the best use of those funds. We also had 12% or $476,000 as a trust escrow disbursement, just releasing funds. Under the purchase orders, we had 6, totaling $15.3 thousand. 39% or $6,000 of that went to transfer station for diesel fuel. 31% or $4.8 thousand to the Weber Morgan Health Department for computers, and 20% or $3,000 went to operations for tree maintenance, topping trees.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move to action items under G. Number one is a request for approval of a letter of intent by and between Weber County and Davis County for joint economic development. Commissioners, this is under what I've been doing. Just to be clear, in 2017, in May of 2017, we started identifying that we needed to do a better job with our economic development. We were not precise, and oftentimes we were presenting things not together with cities. We weren't being a very good steward, or we weren't doing as well as we could with economic development. We then sent out over 6,800 touches to local businesses after working with all the cities. They gave us all of their business information, and we sent information to all those businesses, or 6,800 of them. Following that, we reported back to the same cities and told them we were making progress. Of that cities, we had nearly a 27% return for the people that we reached out to, the businesses. How can we help your business grow? What can we do to help you with them, to have trained staff? How can we help you grow the business that's already existing in Weber County and stay here and to bring more people here? We did visits to them. Ms. Will Banks and many of us were out on those visits with those businesses. We had a very, very positive response from the business community, that they loved the fact that we cared enough for them to stay. And from that, we learned the type of businesses that we would like, that we have strength in, or trained people in our area to go after. We knew that we wanted to raise the income level of the average person who lives in Weber County, and if they were unemployed, get them some better employment if they chose, or to bring jobs in that were higher than the state average of 57,000. This also turned into feedback that showed that the businesses didn't necessarily care where a city line was or where a county line was, and so they just cared that they had a good bottom line and that they were supported and could get people to work and that they could make money and be prosperous. So with that, we took that borderless charge, and we realized that a regional approach to economic development was important. Because of this, we talked to many of our neighboring counties, and the one that made the most sense to us was Davis County. We know that Davis County commutes to Weber County. In fact, they send more people from Davis County to Weber County to work than we at Weber County send south. We also learned that it was a good idea for the two counties to work together politically. It was more efficient for us to do that. So this letter of intent is basically saying we want to work together to establish an economic development program that incorporates regionally between Weber and Davis County, a way for us to do business collectively, enhancing the services that we already have. And so that's what this letter does. Last week, Commissioners, we passed a interlocal agreement. This is an enhancement to that interlocal agreement. And so I'm asking you to ask any questions with regards to that, and then hopefully approve this. Currently, or concurrently right now in Davis County, the same discussion is happening with the Davis County Commissioners as they meet at 10 a.m. on Tuesday mornings. Do the same thing here, so we'll both enter into that agreement. So Commissioners, with that being said, with regards to economic development, any other comments or things that I may have missed or might not have articulated as quite as well? Any questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
So moved. I mean, seconded after the so moved.
Which one would you prefer?
I think I just want to second it. I don't want to double motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. Item number 2 would be by Sarah Tolliver. We're going to have a presentation and a request for approval of a Visit Ogden 2018 annual report for 2019 and a marketing plan. Sarah Tolliver is the president of the Convention Visitors Bureau and Visit Ogden here locally, is recognized in this part of the United States as being one of the best at her craft, and we appreciate you being right here in our own hometown, Sarah.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Thank you for having me here this morning. I'm here as part of our contract with Weber County. Part of the contract states that I'll present our annual report and marketing plan on an annual basis for your approval. And it's a great opportunity for me to highlight the economic engine that destination promotion is in our county. So I'm going to start off, we did a video presentation of our annual report this year, so I'll start off with that.
From this skinny building on Washington Boulevard, with this small staff and this group of elected officials and passionate community members, along with the help of dedicated partners and stakeholders, nearly 10% of Weber County's economy is driven. We're Visit Ogden, a nonprofit organization tasked with the strategic development of Weber County's travel and tourism economy. From destination development initiatives to public policy advocacy, from leisure travel marketing to sales efforts, attracting conferences, meetings, and events to the area's public and private venues. Travel and tourism drives 11.1% of the private sector jobs and 9.1% of the tax revenue for Weber County. Last year, the efforts of Visit Ogden helped drive over $273 million in visitor spending, generating over $8.4 million in local tax revenue, relieving the tax burden of every household in Weber County by $1,375. We work with state officials to ensure adequate funding of travel and tourism. Using those funds, we develop strategic, cost-effective marketing campaigns to attract individuals and families to our local restaurants, shops, attractions, resorts, and public lands. Skiers and snowboarders, hikers, cyclists, climbers, and paddlers. We utilize ever-evolving tools and trade shows to pitch our venues to business travelers, meeting planners, and event organizers. We're there to help potential visitors at every step of the travel cycle. From aspirational social media efforts and targeted digital media campaigns during the dreaming and decision phases of the cycle, to a comprehensive web presence during the planning and booking stages, to providing an array of visitor information materials and convention support services while visitors are experiencing our destination. With the assistance of lodging, attraction, and restaurant partners, Visit Ogden facilitates familiarization tours of our area with high-profile journalists who then spread the word of the beauty, accessibility, affordability, and friendliness of our community to every corner of the globe. You thought Ski Magazine, Forbes, Esquire, and the Wall Street Journal just happened to stumble upon Weber County and write glowing reviews on their own? You think the Ogden area just lucked into the 71.6 million impressions those and other outlets made this year? You think Spartan chose to bring over 7,000 athletes to Nordic Valley, and that the Xterra Pan American Championships brings athletes from around the globe to Snow Basin without a little coaxing? You may occasionally have to wait an extra 5 minutes for a table at your favorite restaurant when a big event is in town. You may find yourself parking a bit further from the ski lodge than you're used to, as Ogden's secrets are discovered. A road or trail may experience a brief closure once or twice a year as athletes race for championship titles. We're overwhelmed by the enthusiasm and assistance of our community partners in the organization of events like Ogden Restaurant Week, the Yeti Bash, the Sweaty Yeti Fat Bike Race, and the Ogden Marathon. We're grateful for the understanding and support of our local residents who not only accommodate, but participate in our efforts. We know how lucky we are to live in a place of such abundance, so it's hard to begrudge the ever-growing number of people who want to visit Ogden.
So I want to reiterate a couple of the points made in the video, highlights indicating the economic impact of tourism on our community. In fiscal year 2017, travel and tourism generated $273 million in taxable sales, which was a 9% increase over the previous fiscal year. Our total local sales tax collection in Weber County for that time period was $91.7 million. The direct spending from travel and tourism generated 9.1% of that, or $8.4 million to our local tax revenues. And as demonstrated here and discussed in the video, what that means to all of us is that we save $1,375 per household in the state of Utah because of tourism efforts. I have been asked what the return on what we do is and if we can quantify that. So for the last 2 years, we've utilized state numbers in each of the areas that we are involved in bringing tourism into our community. And we're a year behind because of the numbers that we need to get from the state. But for 2017, we figured that we generated about $45.6 million in economic impact, which based on our budget means that for every dollar invested in Visit Ogden, $40.57 was generated in economic impact to our community. When we look at the measurables that we take a look at in our office, our tax revenue collections, primarily in the tourism tax bracket, are what we look at. We've had a 17% increase in transient room tax and a 10% increase in restaurant tax since 2016. There is discussion that this economic bubble that we're in has lasted far longer than any others, and that we're all expecting a little softening of the market. When we look at that, we did see lower increases from 2017 to 2018 than we did that 2016 to 17 period, but we are still at over a 5% growth in each of those tax measurements year to date. So our goal is to make sure that we continue that growth in a reliable, consistent, and sustainable way. We also look at other lodging metrics like our average daily rates, which have increased 7.5% since 2016, and our revenue per available room has increased 8.7% since 2016. Our occupancy has remained pretty consistent, as you can see, over the years, but has increased just slightly at just under 1%. We view this as an accomplishment considering all of the short-term rental inventory that has come online during that period. These reports are only reflective of our flagged hotel properties within Weber County. So if you take into account all of the short-term rental properties and other lodging opportunities that are available, those are not reflected in these numbers. We also look at the revenue we generate over at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center, at which we generated about $1.3 million this year, and our goal is to increase that by 10% for next year. We also look at an overall economic impact number from that group sales side of things and have a goal of reaching $10 million in economic impact by the end of next year. To do this, we're utilizing new sales tools next year. You saw in the video a SendSite proposal that it was scrolling through. So we are now moving beyond sending a packet to a meeting planner, and we have a whole online proposal that we send out that not only provides video opportunity and more pictures and an opportunity to wow the meeting planner, or group, or event planner, but also for us to track it on the back end. We can see when they've opened it, we can see the information they're viewing, we can see who they've shared it with, to allow us to better refine our methods and see what's creating engagement. This is another tool, and I don't have the online capabilities to demonstrate, but if you visit our website, you'll see that we've invested in this new virtual reality 360 platform. So all those icons on there that you see, this is just a snapshot of downtown Ogden. You can click on each of those, and it will take you to each of those facilities, as well as up into Ogden Valley. You can see footage of our ski resorts, of the reservoir, of some of our trails, and all of these venues downtown. And this is an example of the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. If you were to click on that, you can go in and actually do a virtual tour of the conference center. We also have one of Golden Spike, a number of our other venues on there. But you can see the outlines on the left and right here. A meeting planner can go ahead and put in those air walls to see what the ballrooms look like when they're separated, and really just, we've always said that we have a much better opportunity of selling people if we can bring them here on site. That's not always the opportunity that we're given. So we feel like this is the next best thing of being able to really immerse them in the community by being able to scroll through and see the proximity of everything and what we have to offer. So we're very excited about that. We will be using these tools to attract new business, obviously, but we're excited to announce new partnerships we have going into 2019 with the Sports Diversity Leadership Council. We have renewed Spartan for another 3 years. We're welcoming Ogden UnCon to our community, which is a self-grown community event that we anticipate to be another annual really great citywide draw. And of course, our TCG Worldwide Review Conference that we host each year. On the marketing side of things, we talked about the co-op in the video. This is a piece that Shane created to communicate to our partners the requests that we were making for support for the Utah Office of Tourism co-op dollars through the Tourism Marketing Performance Fund. We asked for our partners' financial support. It's a dollar-for-dollar matching co-op program, and obviously the more we can put into the pot, the better opportunities we have of receiving those dollars in return. We're proud to say that this year on all 3 of our co-op applications, we received 100% of our requested funding, equaling $258,398 in matching co-op money to further our marketing budget. We also supported another $72,050 in other Weber County community requests. So the total, you can see the impact that will make on the marketing we have in this community. Our call to action for everything we do is to drive visitation to our website, where we can make sure that we have the most complete, robust, and accurate information possible. We have never been a membership organization, unlike some bureaus, because we feel like we're a community, and our job is to be a resource for our potential visitors to represent everything there is in this community. So whether you're a paid member or not, we make sure that you are available on our website and that we are promoting everything this community has to offer. Our organic traffic last year increased by 30% year over year, and our engagement with our blog increased by 440%. We provided more than 58,000 outbound clicks to our partner websites through our website. As part of this, we're trying to engage more or generate more engaging content, as well as doing our best to guide our visitors through our site. Destination marketing organization sites are a little bit tricky because they tend to become online phone books as we list all of the partners and all the resources and all the restaurants and shopping and et cetera in our community. So instead of doing that, we're trying to draw people further down the funnel and provide this content that allows related content to be shown. So like this example was Powder Mountain's page. You're interested in skiing, you click on Powder Mountain, you scroll down the page, and there at the bottom you'll find other information that's relevant to planning a ski vacation or a vacation around that particular listing. This is another page you saw in the video. It's an online quiz we've implemented. The engagement with this is pretty spectacular. It's a test to see whether you're gritty or glam, because it's part of our way of communicating that there are very different, unique experiences that you can have in our one community. Our social presence continues to grow. We grew our Instagram followers by 10% to more than 12,000, and our Facebook followers by 5% to more than 24,000. All of this has been done without any paid strategy behind social. It's all been organic. So in 2019, with the new changes in social algorithms, we will be putting dollars behind these. So we expect those numbers to grow even more. And obviously the PR, media relations side of things, we focus on this a lot. We hosted 11 fam tours with 21 journalists last year in partnership with Ski Utah and the Utah Office of Tourism, which resulted in nearly 72 million impressions for our destination. And events. You're all very familiar with some of these. We kick off the year with the Wasatch Yeti Bash in downtown Ogden and the Sweaty Yeti Fat Bike Race and Festival up at North Fork Park in Eden. That one is, I think, a great example of how a destination event turns itself into destination development. We're excited that the race this year will take place on the new Trail 365, which was built up at North Fork Park due to the success and interest shown for fat biking through last year's event, so that we have a fat bike dedicated trail up at North Fork Park instead of utilizing all of the Nordic ski trails. Restaurant Week is one that was started by a number of downtown Ogden restaurants. We do all of their marketing and promotion for them. And then as we get ready to welcome whatever number we choose today, 150 to 250,000 people in our downtown, May 9th, 10th, and 11th in the celebration of the sesquicentennial of the Transcontinental Railroad. And then obviously you're all well aware of our Worldwide Review Conference. That is an event in and of itself as we plan that week in conjunction with the conference center team for all of those foreign dignitaries and Air Force staff. Which, by the way, will have a sesquicentennial railroad theme for the closing night this year. Destination development is an area, obviously, that we focus a lot on. We need to make sure, as a destination marketing organization, that we're also taking care of the management side of things, that the experience that we're selling to visitors is the one that they actually have when they come, and that we're being responsible to our residents here in managing the growth and providing the infrastructure that's necessary to support the visitors. So one of those that we've been working on for a number of years that is coming to fruition is wayfinding signage. And I know some people ask the question about wayfinding, don't we all just use our phones and Google Maps and everything else anymore? But wayfinding has more than one purpose, and that is that not only does it provide placemaking opportunities for districts and communities, it is a bit of a sense of security if you're headed down a long road to a destination and you're not really sure you're still headed on the right path. When you see that signage, it's some reassurance that you're headed in the right direction. But also for our locals and our visitors, it is an indication of what else there is to do. So if you were to find yourself at the Megaplex, for example, going to a movie, and you see signage indicating that there is the amphitheater and 25th Street and Perry's Egyptian Theater to your south and the river and all the amenities to your north, then, you know, all of a sudden you've been given an opportunity to explore our community and know what else there is to offer, because it's amazing how many people don't know everything that there is in this community. And then next year, the expiration of the Conference Center bond, which opens up some different and new opportunities as well. Advocacy is another role that we play, and an increasingly important part to continue to educate our community, our elected officials, and our stakeholders on the economic driver that tourism is for our community. With that, we work with our partners on appropriate legislation and local ordinances to support tourism and destination development efforts, and are excited to be working on this with this Regional Economic Development Group to help on the promotion and marketing side of things. So with that, I'll just say thank you. I want to thank my team publicly for their excellent work. As you saw, we're a small team. We make a lot of wonderful things happen, and we have great jobs getting to promote the amazing destination that this community is. So thank you for your support. We appreciate it very much.
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Tolliver? Please.
You guys have done a great job, Sarah. I'm impressed, and I want you to know I think you've done great.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make sure that we said it again. So for every dollar we're spending, it yields a return of
$40.57 in economic impact to the community.
That's a pretty good return on investment for if you're a county corporation. That's really good. And I was also impressed with the fact that, do these things just happen? That there were 71.6 million impressions based on the work that you all have done, just promoting our Weber County, Ogden-Weber County area, which is 71.6 million. That's
just through the PR.
That's fantastic. And there was 50-something click-throughs I heard in there too, which is driving business to other things. Those are outside tax dollars that don't have to come from people who are locally taxed. So they help contribute $1,375 on every household, or every tax ID number sees, well, they don't actually see a $1,375 credit, but they certainly would understand if they're all of a sudden we didn't have any tourism and their tax bills were $1,375 more than they were today. We enjoy that credit, although it's not printed, because of that. That's wonderful. Commissioner, you had another comment, I think.
I was just going to say, I've been involved in this a long time, and when we started, about 20 years ago, the return on investment was 7-to-1. 7-to-1. And we've been able to climb that now. And you can see from what she said today, $40.50 to 1.
And that's just for Visit Ogden.
Yeah.
The state numbers, I mean, if you look at tourism in the state, it's an $8.3 billion industry now.
I'm just way impressed with where this has gone and what they've been able to do. And the amount, when I started, the amount of our taxes that tourists paid was around $450, $500. And you can see now it's $1,375.
$75.
Oh, that's good.
And Commissioner Jenkins is being a little shy, I wouldn't say, but he was, when he was senator, was the one that helped with the tourism to help do the matches. And so as local entities decide to invest in themselves, the state, through the State Office of Tourism, also chips in so that they do a match. And so they're again, we automatically double our money so as we try to reach people outside the community to do that. And I compliment you. That's just another good decision that's been made. Sarah, is there anything else that we can answer for you, or any questions? And commissioners, I'll entertain a motion to accept the annual report and the 2019 marketing plan as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Ms. Tolliver.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. It was really awesome. Mr. Johnson, item number 3 is a request from Weber County Emergency Management for the approval of the Weber County CERT program policy and procedures. CERT would be the emergency response team. Eli, if you'll give us a little more information on that.
For a number of years, morning, Commissioners, by the way.
Morning.
For a number of years, Weber County Emergency Management, Office of Emergency Management has participated in the Community Emergency Response Team program. Partnering with the cities within Weber County, this program provides training, disaster training, preparedness training to the citizens of the county. Following that training, should they choose, those individuals who graduate those courses are then given the opportunity to what we call affiliate as a volunteer with either their city or the county if they live in the unincorporated areas, to basically make themselves available on a volunteer basis in the event that a disaster or significant event occurs. They volunteer to provide their services to that local government agency when requested. Today, we're just asking, over the last few months, we have created a set of policies and procedures that basically standardize how the county participates in this program, how we will administer the program, how we will vet those volunteers should they decide to affiliate with the county. So we've just gone through that process to kind of standardize the procedures and the policies that we will use to vet and organize these volunteers in the event that they are called on. And we're just here before you today to ask that you approve those policies and procedures for us moving forward.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm going to ask a question that I don't know the answer to. But if you would turn around, I want to ask the audience, how many in the audience, by the show of hands, know what CERT is or are CERT trained? That's fantastic.
Here you have it.
That's really, really cool. You know, I remember 20 years ago that this was a brand new thing and no one knew what that was. And now, basically, it's my opinion, for those who are CERT trained, and we welcome Tim Vandernack from the Standard Examiner here, but I'm going to make a very strong point. I believe that those who are CERT trained are those who genuinely care about their neighbor, not just themselves, but about their neighbor, because that's what that training is in the event of a huge catastrophe. It's those who can take care of them or people around themselves in an emergency situation. And I commend all of you who have gone through the training and encourage or invite those of you who haven't to participate in this. So, commissioners, with that little speech there too, I'd invite you to have any questions for Mr. Eli Johnson.
Question?
Please.
Mr. Johnson, when was the last time you had a training, an emergency response?
Pretty much every spring, for all intents and purposes. We use our CERT volunteers for sandbagging during our, pretty much every spring, our runoff flooding that we experience in at least some portion of the county pretty much every year.
Good, so you, these volunteers have grown to be, to expect to be called on.
Yes, many of them have.
That's good.
Yeah, I know Ogden City utilizes theirs for community notification. They use their volunteers for community notifications. They work a lot with assisting with traffic control during the 24th of July parade. Each city within the county organizes their groups and utilizes them a little bit differently. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, there are certain volunteers probably out doing something every month of the year.
Good, that's great.
That is great.
Thank you.
Commissioner, any questions or
Eli,
comments?
is this part of our overarching emergency management plan, this cert?
Yes, yes. This is one of the pillar projects, what they call the pillar programs from FEMA for organizing disaster response and preparedness as a whole community.
So we're continually updating our emergency plan, which really was my point was.
Continually updating our plans, continuing refining all those annexes, different partners, names, numbers, changing constantly.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Eli, one last thing before I call for a motion is I want to compliment you. You've spent much of your life's work taking care of this program and others, and I've watched you in action and in other situations and appreciate the calming confidence that you are during those situations where people are oftentimes very excited and panicked. And you just, with your training though, and with just the way you are, you're a fantastic asset to Weber County, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the Weber County CERT program policy and procedures for Mr. Johnson, or for Weber County.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Do we have any Tylenol for Commissioner Ebert? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you, Eli.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. Wilkinson, you're next. It's a request for approval or of a resolution. The Weber County Commissioners and the Weber County approving appropriation for funds to Weber Pathways.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Weber Pathways is requesting a donation of $5,000 to print 5,000 copies of a countywide trail map in Spanish. These funds will come from the Community Development Department budget, and this donation, in cooperation with Weber Pathways, will provide a needed resource to our community and help increase awareness of the county's many recreational opportunities. We will receive a spot on the map for sponsor recognition and for a short statement that the county can put out. And while we did not ask for this recognition, we certainly are proud to share one more way that we are winning in Weber.
Thank you.
So, Commissioners, I believe this is a very good opportunity for us, and I would request your approval of this resolution.
We have a member of our team that sits on that executive board. Is Holland still here? I know those maps, the original printing of those maps that were in English have lasted not just a year, but they've lasted a number of years. And so the amount of 5,000, what's the anticipated shelf life on these so people can enjoy them for, do you know?
I don't know the shelf life. They are to be distributed to certain key points within the county that Weber Pathways has established, but I can ask that question.
That'd be great. Commissioners, questions with regards to the Weber Pathways maps in Spanish? None being heard, then I'll entertain a motion.
Resolution 56.
I'll make a motion we approve Resolution 56
Second.
as stated.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call on the resolution. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert. Aye. Commissioner Jenkins.
Aye.
And Chair Harvey.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item number 5 is a request by Brian Barron for the contract by and between Weber County and Andrew Heward for indigent defense.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Mr. Barron.
Andrew Hayward has actually been one of our contracting attorneys for several years, working in our juvenile court, representing parents and juveniles there. This is just a result of a few changes he's had to his assignments. He has had the time commitment for his child welfare drug court increase, and so he's bumped up the compensation on that. Also, he's taking over an assignment that belonged to Carol Mortensen, and that's the mental health court. She left us last month to stay home with a child who needs her. And so he's going to be taking over that assignment as well.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Barron? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve that.
I have a motion
Second.
And a second to approve the contract between Weber County and Andrew Heward for indigent defense. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, I've asked Commissioner James Ebert to take. It's a request for approval to ratify an interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and the Weber Area Dispatch 911 and Emergency Services District.
So the county provides certain administrative services to the district. Last year, we went through a process to identify the true costs of those services, and we presented them to the district. The district was willing to accept the increase for those additional services or those services provided. So this resolution is, or this contract is approving providing those services for the amount allotted within the contract.
Very good. Any questions, Commissioner? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion to
Excuse me,
ratify.
Commissioner Harvey.
Excuse me?
Sorry, I guess two comments. Commissioner, I believe the contract that is before you, the interlocal agreement, has a date on it of July 1st. Since the county has already been providing service, if you want to, if you wouldn't mind addressing.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
really quickly.
Thank you.
So what happened is, as the county was going through the process of really determining the true costs of these services and having a better way to allot those services through a new accounting system, usually the contracts would have been signed on July 1st, but we went through a whole process that took 4 or 5 months. We presented the numbers to the district. The district reviewed them and then worked with our staff to come to a number they both agreed on. And that's why the contract has been pushed from July 1st to December. So this will, believe start December 1st, 2018 and run through December 31st, 2023. Those are the changes to the contract dates. Sorry, I missed that.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion, Commissioner.
I'll make a motion, we approve this contract as written and changed.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. Commissioners, I'll draw your attention. What was originally F, like Foxtrot 10, which will now be our next thing in our action items, our next item in our action items. It's a request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing Ryan Arbon to the Public Shooting Ranges Facility Study Committee. Stacy?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Public Shooting Ranges and Facilities Study Committee recently met, and they have recommended that Ryan Arbon be appointed to this committee to replace Sheriff Terry Thompson after he completes his term of service. So his appointment would be effective in January.
For public benefit, Ryan Arbon is the newly elected sheriff of Weber County. Commissioners, any question? Great, I'll entertain a motion to accept that, resolution for Ryan Arbon to be on the shooting committee.
So move resolution
57.
57.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Thank you, that resolution carries. Thank you. Great, Commissioners, we'll now move from item number G on the agenda to item number H on our agenda, which is a public hearing. We welcome those of you who have stayed for this public hearing, and we especially welcome those members of the Planning Commission that are here. While I don't know all of you, I do see Chair Bell here. We welcome you, and we're glad that this is interesting for you to attend. Thank you. Commissioners, I need a request for a motion to adjourn the public meeting and convene a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now have a public hearing or discussion action of the following. Charlie Ewart, item number A is a request to amend the West Central Weber County General Plan to offer definitive growth boundaries around a commercial village at 4700 West and 12th Street, and to expand the assigned commercial acreage. Mr. Ewart, go ahead. Let's go to this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a brief presentation for you, after which the applicant, Dennis Costesso, would like to address you to go over some of his requests. So what we have before us, as you mentioned, is a request to change the zoning of property on the southwest corner of 47th and 12th Street from A1 to C1. In order to do so, we'd have to change the general plan to support it. So this is the current site conditions. You can see 4700 runs down the middle of the screen. The subject property is the one in red. On the north side, it is bounded by 1150 South or 12th Street, and on the south, it's bounded by Union Pacific Railroad. This is current zoning. Just to the east is a new C1 zone adopted a few months ago. To the north and east is a C2 zone, and then the surrounding area is A1, and a little bit more to the west is A2. This would be what the proposed zoning would change the map to look like. So just color that 10-acre parcel, the C1 pink. So let me just reverse, just to show you the difference. So rezone considerations. The primary rezone consideration that the county code speaks of is whether or not the request complies with the general plan. So right now, what we need to do, if the county commission is desirous of changing the zone, is you would also need to change the general plan to support it. Right now, your general plan has a big asterisk at the intersection of that area. And if you look up into the right-hand side, you can see Community Village Center is designated for commercial node of 22 acres of supportable neighborhood services. One of the challenges that we have and that we express to the Planning Commission is that asterisk doesn't give us an indication of how the growth of that commercial village should be or should look in the future. The 22 acres does give us some kind of a limit, but to whom and where and how is the question that we have. This is the proposed change. This is not the applicant's proposed change. This is being proposed by staff. The applicant has asked that this be changed just to support his 10-acre parcel being rezoned. As we look at this whole intersection, we're looking at the quadrant and the possibility for commercial neighborhood services to exist in the whole quadrant. We did chat with the landowner of the parcel that is on the northwest side, and that landowner said, I don't want to rezone yet, not interested in having commercial taxes yet, but I am interested in having the plan changed so that I have the opportunity, or so that my kids have the opportunity to rezone in the future. So with that in mind, we've got three alternatives for you to think about. You can approve the proposal as it sits before you. If you do, you've got two resolutions in your packet to enable it. One is an ordinance, one is a resolution. You can approve with changes, and you can deny the rezone petition. If you decide alternative one, approving it, this is the staff preferred alternative. It is the one that we presented to the Planning Commission. It reflects a future quadrant of commercial area in that area, and provides a distinct commercial boundary. So in essence, we're creating that line that we say we're not going to grow outside of this, instead of having the asterisk that was on the map before. Alternative two, same as alternative one, but we'd need some direction on how you want to go in a different, if you want to amend it, we need some direction on how to do that. And then alternative three, this is the Planning Commission's preferred alternative, is to deny the application. The Planning Commission, it was a 6-1 vote, and the primary discussion they had was we'd really like to look at the entire community as a whole through a general plan amendment as a whole, then look at just this area. Any questions for me?
So I'm confused between alternative one and alternative two. You said alternative two is the same as alternative one. What's the difference?
Yeah, alternative two is essentially if you want to make any changes to alternative one, just let us know what that is, and we can go back and amend the resolution and amend the ordinance in the way that you ask us to support what you're asking. So if you're thinking it needs to be bigger, it needs to be smaller, it needs to be a different kind of zone, just let me know what it is, and we'll make those changes so you can sign that.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Ewert, the question I have is if the Planning Commission turned this down, why are you in front of us today?
So the applicant paid an application fee and has asked for a final decision to be made. So Planning Commission doesn't make a decision, they just make a recommendation. The recommendation is coming to you, County Commission, to make a final decision. So the decision isn't made until the County Commission has made it.
So are there members of the Planning Commission here today?
I believe so, yes.
I'd like to talk. I'd like to have our Planning Commission Chair testify, if you would.
That'd be great. I would, if he's agreeable to that, I also know that the applicant would like to speak to the commission. You said that in the beginning.
Yes.
So with that being said, let's first hear, Mr. Bell, are you the chair of the Planning Commission now? Who is the chair? Chair Hancock. I'm sorry, is he here? I don't see him. So, are there any other members of the Planning Commission here other than you today? That sets it to you. I hope that you, I don't know, would you be willing to answer some questions? Great. With Mr. Castesso, he's here? Very good. Would you like to, you wanted to say something? Now would be a good time for you to come up. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Yes,
Excuse me just a moment.
Glad to have you here, sir.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Dennis Castesso. I live at 4206 West, 1800 South in West Weber. I'm the current owner of the property located at 4733 West, 1150 South that is being considered for zone change. My family have been owners of that 10-acre parcel for more than 75 years now. As was mentioned, the property makes up the southwest quadrant of the intersection of 4700 West and 12th Street. As stipulated in 2003 by the visionaries and authors of the community's general plan, the property located at the four corners of this intersection should be set aside to be zoned as commercial property because of its unique location. Two of the four quadrants has been already discussed, have already been approved for rezoning. Nowhere in the general plan does it suggest that rezoning granted to whoever applies first, but not to anyone else, is not correct. Rezoning is intended for any or all of the four property owners, which comprise the unique intersection of the two of Weber County's most highly traveled intersection roads. I deserve the right to have my deserve the right to have my property rezoned to C1 status, just as you have done for the Gibson Corner and for the Boss property. To do otherwise is simply unfair. In rezoning the Gibson quadrant and the Boss quadrants to C1 status, it set a precedent. In order for the Commission to be consistent in their rulings, I should have the same right to have my property rezoned as has already been granted to others. I would like to see someday my 10-acre property be rezoned and someday made available for the community to use as a community business center in the future, similar to what was built in West Haven. That's my dream. I believe this would be a perfect use of the property going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Law, could you answer a few questions? Or Mr. Castesso, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Pardon me. Your parcel's 10 acres, you're
Yeah.
asking to have rezoned?
Yes.
And would you consider a partial to that, or do you want the whole thing?
the whole thing makes a unique package. I would hope that the whole 10 acres could be rezoned.
Okay. Have you talked to any of the landowners in the area?
No.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Could you, Charlie, I don't know how to facilitate that with our IT guys, could you put that, since we're talking about that intersection, just put the map back up on the thing with the, either having the star or the cutout on there, just so that as we're talking, we can have a visual. That'll work right there. Thank you. That's perfect. Mr. Bell? Mr. Bell, will you state your name and address, just for the record, please?
Yeah, Greg Bell. I live at 4023 West, 2100 South in Taylor.
Great. Commissioner, you had some questions?
I did. Thank you. I appreciate you standing forward and talking about your hearing the other night. So when you had your hearing the other night, I'm looking at what has been sent to us as recommendations. Have you had a public hearing on this piece?
Yep.
Did you have much attendance?
I don't remember the amount of people who were in attendance, but we had plenty. We had lots of comments.
So you hold it here. Was the room full or close?
Full.
No.
I'd say if I had guessed, there was probably 20 people in attendance, maybe.
Okay, so on here it says the Planning Commission would like to get more public input on this decision. So if you held a public hearing, what more input would you anticipate?
When the general plan was created, we had workshops involved, we had small committees formed, and all of those people provided input, went out into the community and gathered input. And then it was decided that between 7 and 14 additional acres could be added to that area. And jumping from 7 to 14 to 45 is quite a big jump, and it's the quantity that we were concerned with of commercial that is going forth without another attempt to go out and reach out into the community and do those kind of workshops.
Okay. So the other part of this, it says the proposal does not comply with the current general plan. So we see the other drawing that he had here had the star around it. So when you say it doesn't comply with the current general plan, I assume you're talking about total acreage.
Correct.
Yeah, not about the placement of it.
Right.
Okay. And then third, of course, we have scheduled to look at the general plan the first quarter of the 2019, so we are going to look at that.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the question that I worry about here is the fact that it's like we want to put everybody's property and everybody's property rights to a general vote. And that's not the way we rule. You know, we do it by making laws that people...
Part of our discussion was exactly that, about whether he had the rights to do that development. And according to the general plan, those rights don't exist. They were all given to Dan Baugh with the 22-acre rezone. And any other property around that currently zoned what it is, there's no room in the general plan to give those rights to anybody else. What he's asking for today is that you give him those rights that don't currently exist. If you remember, part of our discussion as a commission was whether those rights did exist for him. And there was some on the commission that felt like those rights were given away when all the 22 acres were given to Dan Baugh. For a long time, before I was on the Planning Commission, the general idea was that 7 to 14 acres would be distributed around all four corners. But that was set in stone with the Dan Baugh rezone.
Yeah,
so we weren't willing to go any further beyond that. If you remember what was brought to you at that time, we only were willing to go up to that, I think it was 15 acres. And you guys adjusted it to 22.
So on the general plan, when it was created, they put in there 5 to 7 acres on that C2 in here. And so about half of that was taken up by the current C2 that was in there. So it only left about 3.5, maybe 4 acres total for all the other 4 corners. And so the feeling of the commission was that we shouldn't expand that past that 7 acres that was listed in the general plan.
Well, I guess we disagree on, it says, the general plan says the area can support somewhere between 7 and 14 acres of retail, commercial, neighborhood services.
Okay, I got that wrong then.
So that's what we initially thought we'd bring to you, and what we understood was that was in addition to what was already zoned. And that's how we interpret it, that was in addition to what was already zoned there, which would have been the Gibson property.
So was there any pushback against this being in the commercial area?
What being in the commercial area?
The star that's up there right now, nobody fought that. It's just the total acreage that was fought.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the interpretation of whether it should be evenly distributed on all 4 corners.
So one other question I wanted to ask you. This is a little off this topic, but we understand that there's a group of concerned citizens out there that have been meeting lately on this. Have you been involved in those meetings?
I have.
Okay, and is the goal of that committee or this group to incorporate as a city, or is it to stop things from happening? Is there a stated goal?
I don't know that there's a stated goal, but most of the discussion is revolving around the potential of incorporating.
Incorporating, very good. All right, thanks, appreciate that.
Mr. Bell. So you stated that the area can only support 7 to 14 acres. What data are you using or analysis to come to that conclusion?
I'm basing that solely off of the language in the general plan.
Okay, and how old is that general plan?
It was done in 2003, but it was predicted to go out to 2020 based on a specific growth.
Yeah. And so when that was put together within that general plan, what references to data was used? Or was this just kind of a thumbnail on what?
Based on what I gathered from reading the general plan, there was a study that went out based on the amount that the community around that covered by this general plan, the amount of money that they would spend regularly in retail. They went and focused on the amount of money spent and whether that area could support that.
And do you know what their growth population estimates were?
I want to say they said anything beyond 650 building permits, but I don't remember exactly what. The language is in the general plan, but I don't remember exactly.
And you know who they had do the study?
That's in there as well. I don't recall
what the company was.
I don't have the whole general plan. I think it's back there, but in the first couple of pages on the general plan, it states what company was hired to do this study.
Do you think it's appropriate for a government entity to take an individual's property and impose upon them the use of that property?
I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, we have several large tracts of property here that by the general plan's admission are prime areas for commercial growth, and we'll keep that commercial growth hopefully in a generalized area. And now we're looking at bifurcating or subdividing pieces of that property to meet a plan that's approximately 15 years old, based upon some estimates of what people might possibly spend and some growth estimates. And it's a question I'll go to legal here in a moment on the general plan. But now what we're doing is we're carving out pieces of those individuals' property, saying you can only use this amount of your property. And do you think that's the legal requirement, the appropriate requirement of the government to do things like that? Or should we be allowing the private market to do that? We espouse private market all the time until it goes against what an individual's personal needs are.
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not answer that question. I guess they all say depend.
Well, Mr. Bell, it's not a lawyer question. I'm asking you about your personal belief. Do you think it's government's responsibility to overlay government wants on individuals' property? It's a property rights question individually for you.
I do not believe that the government should dictate to anybody on what they should use with their property. With that said, though, there is there is a need for the community to provide planning and zoning for their community
Agree.
accordingly.
I agree.
And the community should provide that input, not the government. And I think that honestly, that's what you do when you arbitrarily assign zoning to certain areas. You're dictating what rights they can or cannot have to that property.
Correct. And I would agree with you 1,000%. But the issue we have in this particular area is the community said that this particular area is where they want to have commercial growth. And then they created within the general plan language that doesn't allow that commercial growth to occur, because they created an arbitrary number on acreage and they didn't allow private market. And so that's the position that we've been put in, because the general plan has a stated objective, but then it has language in there that doesn't allow that objective to work. And then we apply over that now you're asking us to make a decision that affects an individual's ability to maximize the use of the property on a stated usage that the general plan asks for.
Are you saying that because to get 14 acres, you'd have to cut out portions of their property instead of the whole portion of the property?
Well, what we were asked to do initially on Mr. Ball's property is to bifurcate his piece of property and say this much you can use for this much for commercial and this much you cannot. And we felt that was basically ruining his piece of property, because the portion that you were saying we were not going to use as commercial, there was no other usage. You couldn't really farm it. You can't use it for residential. It has no use anymore if we're going to leave it in ag or in residential. And now we have Mr. Costesso here saying, listen, I have a nice piece of property here. It's about 5 acres. It's a perfect size. And now the planning commission is coming back and saying to us, we don't want to use it for that because we've already used the amount of commercial that the general plan has dictated. The issue we have now is we know that commercial grows based upon other commercial entities surrounding it, making it a destination. And now your planning commission is coming and telling us, well, we can't create more destinations within this commercial zone because it falls outside the general plan in the sliver of definition that you're looking at, which says 15 to 22 acres. And so now we have another piece of property across the street now that cannot be included in there because you've bifurcated the goal here. And so how do we as a commission help this commercial node start to function when you've taken all the tools away from us to allow that to happen? And that's, again, I expressed that when I came to the Planning Commission, I think a month or so ago, because I have a hard time taking Mr. Boss' piece of property, Mr. Costesso piece of property, and the other piece of property, and then kind of carving it up to meet this seemingly, to me, nebulous goal that the general plan has, that has competing interests to allow it to occur. Because I don't think you can say this area will only support this amount of commercial growth. Because if I look at Riverdale Road 25 years ago, and someone had said, well, this will only support 22 acres of growth, I don't think that's reasonable. And I believe that this area, if we fail to make this commercial node that's big enough and strong enough to actually get a foothold, will do the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish through the general plan. And I think you're going to have commercials start popping up everywhere, which I don't think necessarily is what you want.
No, and that's why we exist as a planning commission, to help regulate that. And I think we fundamentally disagree on the idea of how much commercial needs to be there to get a foothold. I think.
Is that your responsibility, Mr. Bell, to make a decision on how much commercial can be supported?
No, that's the
in
general
that area?
plan. And where my responsibility on the planning commission is to.
I don't agree that's
plan.
the general plans. The general plan cannot, through its implementation, create and or attract or prevent commercial growth. The market will dictate that. If you allow the market to work, that's what this whole country is built on, is a free market system, and you're doing the exact opposite here. You're trying to dictate a certain amount of growth, not allow that growth to. Listen, if Mr. Costesso puts his property up and it doesn't sell commercially, it's not going to sell. And commercial growth will not occur. Same with across the street, same with Mr. Baugh's property.
And then where does it end?
Well, we've already said that this is the commercial area. You can create it. I think staff recommended that these 4 properties that have direct connectivity to the intersection will be the commercial properties.
Right, and 2 months ago, they agreed that it would just be confined to the 22 acres on Dan Baugh's property. Now here are 2 months later, asking to expand that to 45 acres. And that's the
All of-
concern, is that, okay, and then the adjacent properties,
Mr.
we
Bill,
had
they're-
landowners coming to us
Mr. Bill, they're
then
all
asking
contiguous,
for that to be extended to them
but
as
they're
well.
all contiguous with direct connectivity to the intersection.
So were the other landowners that were in attendance.
So you're telling me that there are more than 4 landowners that are contiguous to that intersection?
Adjacent to the Costesso property, headed west along 12th Street, there was another landowner that was present during our debate, and he said, well, if he gets 10 acres, why can't you rezone mine to commercial as well?
Because it's contiguous to the intersection. It has to be connected to the intersection. That's what
I'm
it
saying. Where
says.
does it end?
The general plan makes it extremely clear that property that's contiguous to the intersection will be the commercial node. I think that's an easy spot to draw the line. I think that's where the commission has stated the law would be drawn. If all this property grows out, then landowners can come and say, okay, we want to look at the opportunity to extend the commercial zone, and then we'll have that discussion. But if the market is growing and allowing this to happen, who am I, or who are you, or who is the planning commission to tell a property owner along that area that they can't maximize their property?
I haven't seen any data to indicate that the market is pushing for
That's
45 acres.
That's because you have to provide the opportunity before the market can start exhibiting itself. And that's what the general plan's trying to do. So the question I have for legal, that's all the questions I have for Mr. Bell. I have some questions for
Do you
legal.
have any more questions for Mr. Bell?
No, I just want to thank him for his service on the Planning Commission. I really do. You're giving me a little bit of a hard time here, but I appreciate what you do. I want you to know that.
I can argue with Greg because we've sat and chatted a lot. So I can have the argument. I feel comfortable that he's not offended. And if you're offended, you can yell at me after.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Again, the question I have now for legal is, what is the purpose of the general plan? Does the general plan give people rights or take people's rights away? Because there's kind of a feeling that the general plan is like statute or a contract, and I'm trying to better understand.
There are requirements in land use statutes that decisions have to be made in accordance with the general plan, but the general plan is not a hard and fast rule. It's more of a set of guidelines, a vision of how a community, we want a community to exist. And it's designed to meant to be kind of a pull to, if we get an application, pull back if we get an application to seriously think about what's being asked. But it doesn't mean that it's a hard and fast rule. If the commission decides, and they have the legal right to do so, that they want to implement a zoning type change, and it requires a modification of the general plan, you're going to have to ask yourselves, at what point do you have enough information where you're comfortable making that change? It's a fluid document that can be updated, on a whole or in parts. But no, it is not a hard and fast rule. It's supposed to be a guiding document for you.
Terrific. No more questions on this subject. Charlie, I'm going to ask you to go to item 2B Bravo, a request to amend the Weber County zone map to rezone approximately 10 acres from an A1 to a C1 at approximately 4733 west and 1150 south.
So the agenda is all wrapped up in the same thing, so the same presentation.
I'm formally addressing this so that we make sure we address everything on the agenda. I recognize that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great. Very good. Commissioners, I'm going to move on to item number 3 under our public hearing, which is public comments. For those of you in the public who wish to comment about 2A or B, we ask that you come to the mic, state your name, city where you live, and limit your comments, please, to 3 minutes. If somebody will run the clock, please.
I'm Dan Baugh, 4441 South, 4300 West, West Haven.
Very good.
I wanted to come first because I have to leave. I'm in favor of giving Dennis this. I think that the county, the planning commission specifically, needs to use some common sense. This is the general area where the growth needs to occur. It gives everybody the opportunity. If I took the stance that the majority of the people have out there is that I've moved out there and I've got my thing changed now, and the rest of you just have to live with it because I'm not going to give you anything. The group out in West Weber wants to control the growth to the point. Lino DiGiorgio's daughters are some of the ones most vocal of that. But see, Lino bid on the property just like I did, and I happened to win it. But yet they've got the houses across the street. Lino was a developer, and Lino would be doing the same thing that I'm doing, the same thing that Mr. Contesto is doing. But his daughters want to stop any type of growth because they happen to live across the street. But you allowed them to put a subdivision across the street 20, 30 years ago. And I think that everybody is, whether you're a developer or a landowner, you need to use some common sense and take a look. Would housing be here, or would commercial be better here, or what would be here? And I think that whole corner, whether you use 100 acres, 20 acres, or 50 acres, that's the ideal spot. You can't do a lot of things between the road and the railroad tracks. People don't want to have the railroad honking their horn in their homes all the time. The commercial doesn't bother them. And so I'm in favor of whether it's Dennis or the people across the street, or even if Commissioner Gibson, ex-Commissioner Gibson, wanted to expand some of his. If they've got ground, I think they should be able to do it. But I think that for 20 years it took me to get my property rezoned. And part of that was because of Gary Gibson. He didn't want any growth. He didn't want anybody to have anything that he didn't have. And he was the one that had the commercial across the street. And I think that needs to stop. We need to have a broader view. Instead of stopping people, let's make our community better, give it the things that we need, and make it better for everybody, not just a few. Any questions before I leave?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Unless you do, commissioners. One moment, please, before you come. Will you start the clock, please, Fatima? Who's going to be our timekeeper? Lynn? Very good. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brad Blanche, 736 South, 4700 West, West Weber. I just recently moved back to West Weber after having grown up there. I really love the early presentation that you did on the growth that's happening for tourism. I think it's a great thing, but the interesting thing is there's a lot of pushback all over Weber County to not have growth and development. But for me, we ski a ton at Snow Basin. It's the same distance from where I live today to go to Snow Basin as it was when I lived in North Ogden. And so it's not that rural, although people want to think that it's out in the middle of nowhere. I completely support and agree with Mr. Baugh and Mr. Costesso on zoning that segment commercial. As you all well know, I have a development just around the corner that's going to have 92 units that are coming in here. Final plans are with Weber County now. I have another project that's a little further away that's 206 units. The economic development for this area and that spot specifically is ideal and would be really great to support the infrastructure that we're all going to need. It's a great location, a great opportunity. I think, Commissioner Ebert, you said it perfectly. You can rezone it commercially if the market doesn't support being able to put a grocery store there or something to be built there. The market and the economy is going to drive this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the property owners need to be given the opportunity to have property that's going to support the growth and development that is coming. So just want to share that.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Valerie DeGiorgio Hansen, 4540 West, 1150 South, Ogden, 84404. First, I'd like to state that I am speaking on behalf of 8 other individuals that are also directly impacted by the decision. And I had a prepared statement, but I would like to address some things that were stated. First of all, our family my father did bid on that property, but because it had been in our family's name for our possession for a very long time, when the railroad came in, they annexed that piece. And it was a gentleman's agreement with my grandfather that should they ever part with that property, it would go back into that family. My dad did bid on it, but because he wanted it to stay rural. He wanted it for the farmers. He wanted that green space. That was important to him. And yes, my dad was a builder and a developer, but anytime he built any homes, specifically those 5, they actually belonged to his sisters. They were in ill health. They needed the money. they asked him to develop it. We went to every neighbor on the backside. We tried to work with them and put in things that were what the community wanted. And I think that's where there's some differences. And yes, Country Corner is, I believe, 3.5 acres. My father is the one that rezoned that with Phil Hancock 30 plus years ago. The goal of a general plan is to state what they take the entire community's desires to see how their community grows. And that general plan is made from that. I do know that where the asterisk is, that 7 to 14 acres was stipulated. And specifically, the C2 was to address the need for a future either fire department, first responder, emergency services. That is why it has a C2. That was the goal of the community because it was such a perfect spot. When people say that, when it is said that people don't want to listen to the trains, I grew up next to the trains. I actually love them. You can see much development going on in Roy along the train tracks, and much of it is new. To say that we are taking away people's rights to develop, what we would like to see, and we have, and I believe has been asked for 2 or 3 years, is that the general plan be adjusted instead of piecemeal, that everyone come in, put a plan together for what we picture as our community in the future, and go make those changes to the general plan, and to halt the piecemeal parts and make the community what we want to see in the future as a whole. It is not taking away any rights. When you purchase property, it's just like when you purchase and build a spec home, you don't know if it's going to sell, and you're right. But I think that commercial needs to be done in a manner where we have infrastructure, we have safety, we have traffic, we have all of those needs addressed. And that is the purpose of the general plan, is to take those needs and concerns of the community and give you a guiding document. And as elected officials, it is your job to listen to the people and the majority and understand where they're coming from. When persons purchase, for instance, we have 2 brand new neighbors and the one before, they looked at the general plan. And I have the privilege to speak for them also. They looked at the general plan before they purchased their property because they did not want commercial. They wanted that open air feel, and they wanted that feeling that I'm not right across the street from whatever. I also pulled up within a 10-mile radius of that intersection, there are multiple grocery stores, most of them within 6 miles, gas stations, everything that a person could need. I think that that needs to be also looked at when you're proposing commercial, because every piece that has been proposed, from Blanche's to Boss to Costesos, they all say we want small businesses, a senior center. We've heard the same thing over and over. But how many small businesses can we support? Or is that ground going to sit empty and become a problem? And I think, too, before anything is planned, we really need to look at the water, how much is available, and the safety and traffic and the policing of that, just for the safety of our community. There are just too many ifs that we are asking, please, just put off all of these zoning changes until we look at the general plan, come up with some good things that are good for everyone. Whether you're the farmer, whether you want to build a business, people are not opposed to you developing your property the way that you would like, but we want it to be controlled. We want it to be done in a way that enhances our community and not just hodgepodge and here and there. I appreciate your time, and I will give you this to add to the minutes.
4 here.
Please.
My name's Jill Hipwell. I live at 585 South, 3600 West, Ogden, Utah, 84404. I have a couple of copies of surveys that I'd like to give to you guys so you can follow it along with me. Is that okay?
Okay.
When doing the research for this meeting, I was reading the responses from the Western Weber Futures public involvement process, which, as you know, was done this year. It has been noted that it could be used as guidelines to a new general plan. It has become clear that a lot more people have the feeling that of not being heard than I had originally thought. There was a total of 4 meetings, and from the totals I figured, you had about 200 residents attending or did the online surveys to let their voices be heard. One of the comments that was on the very first one is, why should I make a comment? You never listen anyway. The answer, this comment was made in March of 28th meeting a number of times. The response is as follows. We are painfully aware of the lack of trust that exists between the public and the government. We hope it is obvious by this process that we are here to not just listen, but to also rebuild. In the end, not everyone will get exactly what they want. But the point of this process is to explore a future that everyone can be reasonably live with. We cannot hear the comments left unsaid. Help us help you. In the August 14th, 2018 meeting minutes, during a work session discussing the community meetings, Mr. Ewart states, one of the biggest misconceptions that the public had was that the county didn't really care about what they want. They were just doing it for show. He adds that they did their best to reassure the public that this was not the case. I do agree with this. He was awesome, just so I really appreciated that. During those meetings, commercial property was discussed. There was a survey done at the first meeting. Question number 4 was as follows. I would like to see more commercial and economic growth in my area. The responses was yes, 11.4%, undecided, 5.7%, no, an overwhelming 82.9%. There was at least 80 people at that meeting. On survey number 2 at the second meeting, if I'm correct, the top of that page states there was 103 people that were surveyed. The question is, if 16,000 new future dwelling units end up being unavoidable, then there will need to be services for them. Which of the following commercial development types would you favor? I've wrote them all down, but none make everyone drive somewhere else was the biggest one, and that was 52%. I liked how that was worded, but that's just me. The final draft report posted on September 13th, and that same staff report states, the concerns expressed may underlay the need for more public engagement prior to any possible future adoption of the new general plan maps. In a Standard Examiner article dated May 28th, 2018, titled Western Weber County Residents Tout Rural Appeal Planners Aim for Balanced Growth, which, by the way, is only one of at least 11 articles in the last 2 years that have been written about stuff going on in the community. The article was actually about the May 15th meeting, underscoring the future development potential in the area. And it states, whatever comes of the meeting, though, I'm going to say your name a lot, sorry. Ewart said county planners, as they chart forward action, aim to follow the lead of the residents in the area. We're here to listen. We're here to help build your community. We're not here to build your community for you. It is my opinion that anyone can draw a circle on a map and make a statement that they believe that 22 acres of commercial would be great on that corner. But the surveys are more realistic to the needs and the wants of the community. The surveys show that we have spoken and do not want the added commercial at this time. Thank you. And thank you.
Good morning.
Hi, my name's Marion Call. I have 2 properties in Weber County, Western Weber County, but my closest property is 4270 West, 1250 South. I'm just kind of kitty corner of the Baugh property. I know that commercial growth will happen out there, but I too agree with Mrs. Hanson and Mrs. Hipwell. I'm against the rezoning of the property right now. I agree with what they have to say. I believe that, Mr. Jenkins, you said that you were going to look at a new general plan in 2019, and I think, why do we need to make a decision right now on developing that commercial property if you're just going to be looking at a new plan anyway? Why can't we work that into the whole new general plan? Why does there need to be a quick decision now about that? And the other point I'd like to make is, I was at the meeting when the Dan Baugh property was rezoned, and so was Mr. Castesso, and he didn't ever say anything in that meeting. He didn't stand up at all. And I think had he stood up and said he wanted his property rezoned or something done, that might have changed the outcome of that meeting at that time. I just am not in favor of that. And I just have one other thing. I don't know if this is appropriate. I haven't been to a lot of county commission meetings. I was looking over the agenda trying to figure out when I could make a comment on another reason why I wanted to come. When you called for public comment, I was thinking maybe what I wanted to talk on was on the agenda, and then you closed the public comment, so I'm wondering if you would open that back up at the end of this hearing?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you call for security?
Here's security. Here's security. I do.
All right, bring him in. I'm ready.
Oh.
Douglas Hanson, we live in West Weber, and listening to the conversations, I hope I don't go over. I had some input, and that was interesting. I find the conversation, especially from the Planning Commission, and I think my opinion is, from what I've heard, they've done really well to hold to the plan, the general plan, and that's what they're, in my opinion, are supposed to do. Now, Commissioner Ebert, you brought up a good question, it's one that's come up for centuries, and that's the difference between personal property rights and government rights to that property. It's a constitutional issue, and we are preserved in our property rights. However, in our efforts to organize our communities and organize ourselves, we end up trying to do plans. And when you do a plan like the Weber County, Western Weber County General Plan, which we did 15 some odd years ago, we did. And when you put a plan together, just like any time you plan a road, you plan a park, you plan something else, you help some and hinder others. When we put a plan together like we did and said, okay, this is a commercial area, we didn't designate, but we kind of guessed that 7 to 14 acres would be appropriate. Well, when you do that...
I'm sorry, you kind of what? You kind of guessed? Is that what you said?
I didn't,
Yeah.
but
I'm taking your time, but that's what my concern is, that this feels like this was a guess that we think 7 or 14 acres, and that was my only point.
The consensus of the community at the time, based on information provided by the county staff, was that this would be appropriate. Okay, that's a better way to put it, I guess. Okay, so that would help. So that was the best guess at the time, if I can use that term, that would be appropriate for a commercial size at the time. Obviously, once you do that, you help some, you hinder others. Somebody around that who's outside the 14 acres, if you want to go there, would be curtailed in what they could do. However, that was the opinion or the assessment or the decision of a community, voting citizens of the county. Now, if there's a question as to zoning and how much, and if we should expand that and so forth, as a commission elected by the members and citizens of this county, you have the responsibility to make those decisions. If it becomes difficult to make those decisions based on what you know, to my opinion, it would be obvious you go back to the authors of that plan, which would be the citizens of the community. Now, we have done that in some regards because we have a new general plan, which was well put together this past year or so to get input on how that should happen. Again, once you establish a plan, then you curtail some people and you help some people. But you have to have a plan or it becomes disorganized, helter-skelter, if I can use mamby-pamby, hither, thither, and it becomes disorganized and makes no sense in how a community grows. Now in Western Weber County, we are concerned in how we grow. It's not that we don't want growth. we don't want commercial. That will eventually happen. We are more interested in slow, steady growth, making it come, and getting it assimilated as we go forth in the future. Now, when we come with hundreds of homes, that makes a big impact, and we're not really excited about seeing hundreds of homes. We figure, I don't know, I'm guessing 15 to 20 homes a year, 25 homes a year, something in that neighborhood is not a bad growth situation for our community. But hundreds would be a big impact. So that's why we have a plan. And when we go back to this village, or what we call the node method of growth, it would be a good idea to grow in nodes. And once you do that, you say, okay, in this area around 4700 and 12th Street, that's a good village or node or commercial area. Then those who are several hundred feet away from that are eliminated from that commercial opportunity. Well, they want to go in too, like we're seeing. Then where does the boundary stop? So every so often somebody wants to be put in that commercial node, and they just closely line up with that and slowly grow. So you need to set some boundaries if you're going to have node or plan to organize growth. That needs to be done, and that's what the plan's for. So when the plan goes awry, then we need to go back to those who generated the plan, the citizens, I would say, and have them have input. So maybe a hearing where we invite or go out to West Weber County and have some citizen input would give you a lot of extra data from those citizens, the people who live there, on what they want. And if they want larger commercial growth, that would be what you would get. And if they don't, that also would be good. And we had some status from the last, that Jill talked about in the last meeting, that there is a lot of people out there, citizens of this county, who don't want a lot of growth. They want what the current plan says, and that the purpose was maintain the rural atmosphere and open space. Maintain and preserve those things. That's what they wanted. That's what we're there for. We like that. We want to preserve that. As long as possible. We know things happen.
Make your closing statement, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So in my opinion, that as you confer about these things, consider the citizens and their wishes versus the other objective, other side, and the development and commercial entities and those kind of things. So you have to look at both sides.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I've got Doug.
Yes.
Come on back. I got a couple questions.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You know, you just described kind of a utopian plan there.
It's just kind of like what West Weber is to me.
Is utopia?
Yeah, it's good.
You know, we had a gentleman get up just a few minutes before you and said that he's got approximately 300 units that are plotted and planned and ready to be approved to come out to that area.
Yep.
And that's 10 times your 25 or 30 homes a year.
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think about that? Because what you end up doing is you take the other landowners' rights away when you do those things. And so we're always balancing this.
And that's been a balancing trick for centuries.
Yeah.
I mean, all across this country, the same question applies. So, to my opinion, it boils down to community. You get a community, a neighborhood that says, we would like this. They get together and you have a vast majority says, this is what we want to do. Yeah, it curtails the minority. It does. But that's just kind of how we grow in an organized fashion. Yeah. And so either helter-skelter, and I've seen areas south of us, to me they look like they develop helter-skelter, and there's no plan, there's no connectivity and developments. There's nothing that says, yeah, we're organized in how we do things. It looks haphazard. So in my opinion, yeah, I disagree with large developments. I really like slow, organized growth.
So Doug, I mean, that's my struggle. That's why I'm just up here trying to put the blocks together, because what is being proposed is helter-skelter.
Yeah.
What we have is helter-skelter. When everyone's trying to hold on to the football, but we're not creating a plan, you get Davis County. And I love my Davis County folks, but you get Davis County. And what I think the general plan tried to do was do exactly what you're saying. I just don't think it understood by doing a couple different things that it was inhibiting that. And we're going to have growth because farmers who have farmed for 4, 5, 6 generations are having kids nowadays that don't want to farm anymore. And so they're selling their property. And so we're going to have 300 possible units coming in, which is 1,000 people who are going to demand services. And once that demand becomes that pressure becomes so high, then we're going to get continued pressure to create all these commercial areas. And if we today don't start identifying where those are and create the capacity and or opportunity for that to happen, then that pressure starts to overwhelm the community and you get haphazard growth. The reason we had Charlie and Rick and our planning staff come out at the beginning of this year was to start not only getting input from the community, but start trying to get information out to the community that this growth avalanche is coming. We see the studies, we understand what happened in Davis County, and so we're trying to, we're the ones who brought this cluster kind of concept and development forward. It was the county.
This wasn't generated by the community, this was generated by us, and so
we're trying
to be proactive so we don't have to be reactive.
So that's our struggle, and I understand your point, and I have a little fun with Mr. Bell, because I like to argue. He's a fun guy to argue with. But we're asked to do something that's extremely difficult, and when I'm not asking for anybody to, but we're trying to do your planning, provide this community, get the community input, understand what the community is trying to keep, which is agricultural open space to preserve that rural feeling, and then build to that both within the residential growth and in the commercial growth. But then we have people who they've drawn a line in the sand that we're going to have nothing. And so you're asking us basically to do nothing and then wait to be reactive to all the issues. And that's what my struggle is. I'm trying to be proactive here. I'm not trying to build in your communities. I'm not trying to overlay something you don't want. What I don't want is for in 10 years to have Larry show up at my door and tell me, why didn't you plan this better? And I'm going to say, I tried my best to have better planning for the community. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. And I'll stop talking. Thank you. You were very articulate. Yes, sir. Of course you can.
No matter what you do, Larry will show up your door and tell you that.
Thank you.
But anyway, in response, it is a dilemma. It is something that has to be done. And in the original general plan, there was the cluster concept. And that was stated very well, and is the concept we wanted, how to do a cluster. That was clear back then, and we haven't really got to it yet. We're still working on it.
If you'd let your brother know that at least I think that you're the more respectful of the two brothers. That'd be
well, I don't yell at you as much.
Thank
yes.
You. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission?
Good morning. I'm
Good
Tom
morning.
Favero, and 4862 West, 2550 South. I represent A.G. Favero and Sons and Favero Farms LLC. I really don't know where to start. We've farmed since 1903. Grandfather, my father, now us. I've got a 47-lot subdivision going on right across the street from our main operation. And my question is, I've got 47 more votes to say that I stink, I spray, I bale hay at night, I do everything wrong. But we own 400 and some odd acres, and I think it's very, very wrong that the newbies that show up in these subdivisions can shut down growth, operations, the way we do things. We have the potential to have 400 houses at 1 acre. When we come to a meeting, we should be able to have 400 votes. The Costesso family had about 100 acres. They should have 100 votes. And the new people that bought ground up in the Ropalato subdivision have 1 vote, but there's 10 of them in there now. And so they have 10 votes. Dennis has 1. I have 1. We're voted out. It's 10 against 1. I don't know where we're going with these property rights. The corner on 12th Street needs to be commercial. I don't care who owns the property, it needs to be commercial. That's the right place for it. That's the busiest intersection in western Weber County, and it has to develop from there. And yes, we're right on track for your plan of the general plan. There's nothing been built there. And it's almost 2020. Your plan went to 2020 and there was 14 acres allotted. There's still nothing built there other than Country Corner. So now we're going to be at 2030, but we're getting a lot of homes. Up where the Ropalato subdivision is, I think there'll be 175, and they're breaking ground there all through it. Across the street from our main operation on 2550 is 47 more homes, and they're cutting that up. I'm going to farm approximately 10 acres there this year. I farmed over 40 last year. It's going away, and I'm going to disappear with it. I can't operate. I take my machinery down the street. We go with 6 balers to bale hay. We'll go a 5-mile distance. We're past, we're in and out, we're everywhere. We'll go to turn in over at my property, double yellow lines, and numerous times we've almost hit people. In fact, we've lost our liability insurance now because of accident with the tractor that got turned around and blamed on us because we didn't have a signal or a light on. We've had a horse get out, and if there wasn't all the neighbors that we have in the subdivisions, the horse would have been fine out for the day. But we had somebody coming along at 5 in the morning. Guess what? They plowed into the horse. So bingo. And somebody else stole about $7,000 worth of siphon tubes that I couldn't replace. So I claimed it. But now I don't have any insurance. So these are the things that we have in growth. But that ground that's on the corner of 12th Street needs to be zoned commercial so that we can build out from an area that Doug described as not helter-skelter. If you look at it the way it is right now, it's helter-skelter. For me to operate as a farm, now I've lost those 47 shares of water out of that ditch. You know what they're going to do to my water on our original property over there? It's going to decrease 47 shares, which means the volume is going to go away. They're going to put that in the pond and now pump it for secondary. So we've got all these problems that we're talking helter-skelter and we're doing this little bit of growth. It's not little bit. It's big time growth, and it's happening quick. And James is right on the money with it. I think everybody has their property rights. Yes, if I could have stopped the subdivision, we go right back to the DiGiorgio subdivision that was years ago off of 12th Street. I used to farm all of that ground. But that subdivision come in, and then it became impossible to farm any of the ground beyond there because those people in the subdivision would come home on a Saturday. If I had the water in the ditch, they'd take it. I couldn't operate that way. I'd come back, the water was gone, wouldn't work. And I know I'm way over on my time, but I think your corner needs to be in that fashion. And when we do look at this regrouping of how to vote on property, if it's 1 acre, you need to give everybody that owns some property. The big property owners all would like to see a lot different zoning than we're getting. They want it smaller, and they want it to be developable, and they want the sewer. And that's what they want, if you talk to the big property owners. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He said I was right.
Any questions?
Well, he said I was right, and people started leaving.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any others that would like to address the commission?
Commissioners, my name is Brent Hipwell, 585 South, 3600 West. I'll make mine real quick. I really respect what Mrs. Call said about postponing things. And the point I have to bring to that is when Mr. Baugh came forth, he had sketches, he had concepts, he had some really good information on what was going to be there. Now, I'm not against growth. I know it's coming. I build roads for a living. I bring some of the growth out there. But that being said, We don't know what the Casessos are bringing. They want to zone it now, maybe someday put something there. Then we're right back here saying, no, you can't. That doesn't comply with our general plan. This business is not something that the community wants. I feel both your job and the Planning Commission would have been very much well served if Mr. Castesso came with plan in hand. This is what I intend to do. I intend to do this on this corner. What do you as a community think? What do you as my Planning Commission and the commissioners think of this plan? Well, we have no plan. We're just rolling the dice saying this will be commercial, but maybe it'll be a junkyard. And that's not what your job or the Planning Commission is. I went to all the Planning Commission meetings, and they struggled with some of that because we're zoning it for something that we don't know what's going there. Any other business that comes before people have a plan in hand. They say, we've done the research. We know we got the rooftops to support this business. We know what we're putting here. We've got our parking figured out. We went with the state. We know where our accesses are going to be. We know what we're doing. This is a future thing. And so my suggestion is, let's postpone it. You say you're going to do the general plan next year. The Castessos are not in a giant hurry to run in there and tear down that white barn on the corner. I say maybe we refund his permit money, send him back. Let's redo the general plan, see what the community wants. Let's see what he plans to put there. Let's get a little more information before we zone it commercial. Because quite frankly, I've got a dead end road on the end of 3600 West that I think I could do 25 acres of commercial out there. Where's my rights? Just because somebody, as you said, threw a star on the map and says, hey, this is where the commercial should be. Maybe I want to do C2 and construction and a little more manufacturing. I've got the perfect property to do it, but the general plan limits me to what I can do on that property. So by giving them rights to BA, limited Casesso, and by giving it to Casesso, it limits everybody else. Now, you stated that it had to be contiguous to that intersection. There is nowhere in the general plan that it says on those four corners has to be contiguous. So the next person that reads that says, well, it's on this street that's adjacent to 12th Street, so therefore, and then where does it stop? It goes down the railroad tracks. Where does it stop? And without following that general plan, which the community spent a lot of time off work, which I'm doing now. 10 o'clock meetings are rough. We put a lot of time and effort into building that general plan. I understand your dilemma, but to disregard the hard work that the people put into that general plan, even though the conceptions of what they're saying can be miscued, and I understand that. I deal with a lot of contracts that are that way, but you're letting down a lot of the citizens out there by not abiding by the general plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hipwell, really quickly.
Yes, sir.
So I grew up in Riverton back in the 80s. Riverton was the same. It was all country. And development occurred.
But it's not anymore.
No, sir, development occurred. And so I guess my question to you, and Mr. Favero hit on this, there's an issue because we have growth, and growth grows around pig farms and
Yes,
dairy
sir.
farms and farmers. I mean, I am so lucky because my back field is an alfalfa, and I love the farmer cutting alfalfa at 2 in the morning. I love it. It makes me smile. I'm happy. But what I am concerned with is that you're coming in with this community wants, this community wants, this community wants, because you are in the majority of the community. What's going to happen, Mr. Hipwell, when people build around the farms? And now we have 400 people surrounding one farmer.
And that's just it with the 200 lot subdivisions is the people that had the majority vote overnight are the minority.
So who do you want protecting your personal property rights when you are no longer in the majority and you can't come to this meeting and say 80 people in my neighborhood don't want this? What happens when you're here saying I need to keep my farming property rights, but I have this place packed with 65 residents that live around you that say we're tired of this? And so I want the community to have input. I want to listen to this community, but I also have a responsibility to some of these individual property rights
But you also have a responsibility to follow that general plan.
Correct.
As set forth by the community
Mr.
as a
Hipwell,
majority.
What happens when the general plan gets changed in 5 years because now there's 500 people living around you?
And then I can live with it, because then it's
And then
the
you're-
majority of my neighbors.
So-
Not three gentlemen sitting up here thinking they
Then
know
you're
what's
okay
best
with
for me.
All right,
you're
we're
okay
going to
with that.
pause.
So, okay.
We're not going to have dialogue going back and forth. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Hipwell.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell, I'm going to ask you to yield, please. We have someone else in the back, I think, that's been waiting to speak. For the crowd, based on what I've seen, is there anyone else by the show of hands who would like to speak? I'm going to recognize you, sir, and then you, Mr. Bell, will close out this discussion.
Okay, my name is Les Meyerhofer. I live at 1348 South, 3500 West. I actually own some of the property, not exactly on the corner, but just to the west of the Rousey property that is not being talked about today.
That's the property on the
northwest corner of 47 and 12th Street.
Thank you.
I am for the change. I think that if you look south, it might be a cluster, it might be ugly, but it's coming north, and we need to be prepared for it. If you look at any major intersection, there's more than 20 acres, I don't know what it is, of commercial. And so I think the general plan needs to be updated. It's obviously outdated, and we need to be prepared for the growth, which that whole area, I own about 9 acres of land that is residential. It's actually split in half. I'm in zone A1 and A2. And so I would actually I was the other property owner that came to the last meeting and said, well, I wouldn't mind mine changed to commercial either. But that is a perfect corner for for commercial. I don't care how you look at it. You got 4700 and 12th Street, major roads. Now that they widened 12th Street heading west, its growth is definitely coming, and I think we need to set aside this land for commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Meyerhofer? Mr. Bell, I'll let you summarize if you will.
Thanks for hearing me again. My name's Greg Bell. I live in Taylor. Just a couple of quick things I just want to point on is, as a planning commission, one of the major points in our decision was the fact that Mr. Costesso admitted in our meeting that he has no immediate plans to sell the property anyway, and we'd like to see an update to the general plan so that we could implement it. Nobody on the planning commission disagrees that that's a good area for commercial. What we can't come to a consensus on is how much commercial should be allowed in that area. So updating the general plan is going to help that a lot, and we're glad we're going to see that next year. I do want to point out a couple of things that was asked to me. The study was done by the Coalition for Utah's Future and its counterpart Envision Utah back in 2002 and finished in 2003. And based on their study, they said, let's see if I can read it. The West Central Weber County area can support approximately 5 to 10 acres of commercial space, and in addition, 2 to 4 acres in 2020, for a total in 2020 of somewhere between 7 and 14 acres, depending on how much shopping actually occurs locally. And one of the debate options that we had, we discussed that we don't have any hard data indicating that that has changed at all. And we want to open the general plan so that we can do those same studies and decide as a community how much commercial needs to be in that area. And I think we came to a consensus that at some point that probably is all going to be commercial, but it needs to be a decision of the community, not us as a commission. So with that being stated, I do want to make another point that I have read thoroughly, as well as many of the planning commissioners read thoroughly, that general plan. And this has always been a hot topic, this intersection. It's been up for debate for several years, and nobody has been able to come to consensus on what to be done on this. I think an update to the general plan will be able to solidify that. My plea to you as a member of that area is that we take into consideration the general public as a whole. And sure, yeah, there's some large landowners out there, and as they develop their property, they give up those votes to those people who buy those property. And we sit here and we talk about property rights going back and forth and whether we take or removing property rights. The truth is, if we grant 45 acres of C1 zone to those people in that area, they now have the right to develop commercial, which they don't today. A legislative item would grant them those rights. So we're not taking the right away from them. Nobody has those rights today. Through your decision today, they will or will not have those rights. So I don't feel like we're trying to remove rights from individuals. I don't feel like we're trying to give them additional rights. We want the community to decide where the commercial can be. Then we can grant them those rights as a developer comes and says, hey, I got somebody who wants to build a supermarket here. Can we rezone C1? The answer is easily yes, because the general plan would allow for it. Today, that's not the case.
Thank you. Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing and convene a public meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We now have the privilege of being able to take action on the public hearing. Is there any discussion on H2A or H2B at this time by either Commissioner Jenkins, Commissioner Ebert, based on what we've learned, been presented, and heard?
Please speak. You know, it's interesting to go through this. A lot of pressure that comes with these public hearings, but a lot of enjoyment too, because it gives me a chance to reflect on some of my past. You know, I remember we give a C2 zone to a gas station in Plain City, and this was going to move the downtown area away from the old Cliff Foltman gas station. And we did, and we put it out there. Well, Mike Panunzio wasn't happy. Neither was Dennis White and several of the others there, because that gas station was across the street from them on a pretty busy corner. And everybody was upset. And that's been probably 16, 17, 18 years ago. Well, Mike Panunzio just sold his farm, and they're going to put, Jeff Hales told me the other day, they're going to put 70 homes in there. Well, now those people are really upset because the homes are there instead of that gas station. It's kind of a tough decision on this commercial. What comes first, the horse or the carriage? You know, which do you put first? Do you give somebody the zoning and then let them develop it? And of course, in Mr. Ball's case, that's exactly what he asked for. He asked for the zoning, so then he could go out and sell the property and market it as a commercial piece of property out there. And or do you do the flip side, where you say, look, this is the general area that we want to develop, and you bring us your offers, then we'll talk. And that star that we've put on that map is basically that. That's what that star is. It says this is what we view as our commercial area. Of course, the big hang-up is 7 to 14 acres versus, well, whatever it ends up being. Well, 3.5 there now,
5.
But it depends on what it ends up being. You know, we've got 3.5 there now on the Gibsons, and then we have 19, 20 on 22, okay, across the street. And now this is a 10-acre piece, isn't it? Yes. So then you say to yourself, well, okay, now you've jumped to a pretty large area. What's it going to end up being? Well, this ends up being tough, but I was adding up just in the conversations that we had here between everybody, and these were hard numbers. These weren't projections. These are numbers that are being developed on the board and approved today in West Weber County was 521 lots. So, I mean, that's a lot. I kind of blew me back. I didn't think it'd be that much. Well, we didn't look further south than 12. So, you know, we kind of think of the West Weber area, but a lot of those lots were south of there. So that area is developing. It's developing a lot. That's all I want to say on that.
Commissioner Ebert?
I have so my personality is really to ask questions, challenge thought, challenge where you're sitting on maybe the fence one way or the other, get you to explain. I appreciate Greg coming up here and giving me where those came from, because Envision Utah is a real organization. I trust their numbers. But sometimes as politicians, we don't want to take a stance on anything. We don't want to ask the real decisions. Real questions to make really difficult decisions. And so I hope no one here feels like I was too, aggressive in my questioning. I just want to make sure that we have these discussions. I know the planning.
I was offended by you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was too.
You kicked
me.
That's
2-1.
I know the Planning Commission has put a tremendous amount of work and progress in this, not only at their work sessions, but probably home at night. And I know many of you citizens, I know Valerie brought in a pretty extensive amount of work that she's put into this. But at the end of the day, it is going to be a difficult decision, and I want you to know that we've vetted it. We've spent a tremendous amount of time talking about it. I weigh today's citizens against future citizens a little bit also, because we've got to plan in the future. That's my responsibility, is to plan growth, not only in residential and commercial, but transportation and economic development and behavioral health and physical health and air quality and water quality and all these types of things. And we look today into the future. And so some of the questions I think that you get from the commissioners are maybe to help our residents maybe better understand what we're balancing here. So we'll have to make a difficult decision here fairly quickly. But again, I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and thank you for presenting your thoughts, ideas, and the amount of work that's been put into it today.
And notwithstanding, commissioners, too, there was in the discussion, it's always great to learn. I love history. I love when you go back 75 or 103 years since you've been farming or doing this and learning a history. I still think it's interesting that after the discussion we've had, especially as it pertains to the southeast corner of that intersection, or what was referred to as BAW, that we still are looking at the 2003 general plan, that in that plan, they wanted to downzone the C2 corner to a C1. That still hasn't happened, because they knew then that the code for fire stations or junkyards or whatever it might be are written in the C1, C2 codes. The specificity of what would be put in or could be allowed in that corner has to do with being zoned C1, C2, C3. I know that C2 allows a 50,000 square foot box store. And the only corner that has that zoning currently is on that southeast. I don't know that why after northeast. I don't know why that hasn't been downzoned. But that's neither here nor there, but it is a point of information as we pay attention and let that document or the general plan, commissioners, that according to Mr. Crockett is a guiding document, it ebbs and flows. That's a good example of that. There have been great comments on both sides by all, and I appreciate that. I have lived in and do still live in areas where there is large tracts of land, and I'm struggling in this position when you have for instance, I'll just use numbers, 100 1-acre lots, or one man who owns 100 acres. and then how that is distributed. I've been looking at that as it relates to the state of Utah and the Utah Association of Counties. What is, what works for rural and what works for urban? Because all of you in this room, all of you want to be represented in Weber County. But the things that apply to us don't necessarily apply to Wayne or Daggett or Paiute counties, only using some examples. It's an opportunity to grow and learn, and I've appreciated that. Commissioners, I'm anxious to hear your comments, and I'll ask now if there's a, we are on item 5. I'll ask if there's a motion. I'll entertain a motion for action on this, on the public hearing on both, if you would, in your motion, if there happens to be one, H2A and H2B, if you'd include both of those or not. Do either of you have a motion?
For me today, I'm going to defer because I'm out of office in 3-4 weeks. And I'm going to support the commission moving forward. I think I've made my position fairly evident, but I don't want to make a motion that we have to spend 20 minutes working our way through. So,
I'd make a motion that we open the general plan and that we do it for the purpose of approving this rezone.
There's a motion to open the general plan for the purpose of approving
this rezone.
This rezone.
And that amends that general plan.
And that amends that general
all
plan.
in one action.
does that hit both of them, or do we need to have 2 separate resolutions?
If you want it all in one, I would just clarify that it includes both items H2A and H2B, and if you have any comments, please.
There's an ordinance to amend the zone and a resolution to amend the plan.
Yeah, so it might be good separate.
So Commissioner, I'll ask you to restate your motion so we can do it.
Well, I think we've got to, you have to do the general plan first, don't you, Charlie? Yeah. So I'd make a motion to redo the general plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. That is that's a resolution. Resolution number 58. Fatima?
Aye.
Jenkins?
Aye.
And Chair Harvey?
Aye. Great. Item number H2B. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'd make the motion to approve H2B.
I'll second that with a clarification. This is just to the Castesso property from A1 to C1. This is not the Rousey property. Okay, I second that. Which ordinance?
And that is ordinance 21.
Ordinance 21.
We have a motion and a second for this ordinance. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins?
Or pass.
Oh, then I'll pass.
Aye.
And Chair Harvey? Chair Harvey?
Is that an aye?
Yes, you did.
That's an aye. Thank you. Great. Commissioners, I've made a promise to Ms. Call. We're going to hear, if you would, put your comments in 3 minutes, if you would, please, before we conclude.
I just had a question, and then I wanted to make a statement. It was brought to some of our attention that there is some more pathways being built out in western Weber County. Is that correct?
I wish that we had staff here to answer that question. Charlie, go ahead. Please come to the mic.
So there was a proposal recently attached onto the roadless rules changes to add a couple more pathways on the plan. One of which would just be to reaffirm what's already in the general plan, but we were looking at canals and 3500 west and 2550 south and 3300 south for off-road pathways. It was pulled from that for you guys to think about separately from the roadless thing because it was just different enough.
Thank you.
Well, we had heard that. I had just, I had planned to come to a meeting on the 13th, but I said that I was told they weren't going to talk about it. But I had sent a text message out to about 40 of my friends and neighbors and asked them what their opinions were on the pathways. And I just have all of their comments, what they feel about pathways, more pathways in western Weber County. I didn't know if you wanted a copy of that.
I would like a copy of that. I'll
Okay.
speak for myself. If you have one for staff too, that'd be great too, also. Thank you. I can make sure that this gets to the.
Thank you.
This is about pathways, it's called.
This is about, more pathways out in western Weber County. And of the 40 people I contacted, I got about 20 back. The majority were against for different reasons that they stated on that. And so I just wanted to bring it to the attention. Like I said, I didn't know where that was going. I just heard a rumor, so I thought, well, I'll come and find out for myself what's going on.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Appreciate it. Commissioners, we'll now move to item number I on the agenda, which is commissioners' comments. Would either one of you like to comment?
You know, it's hard to know where to go on these public hearings, and you want to be fair to everybody, and it's hard to know what comes first, the cart or the horse, and you want to be fair, and in my mind, I agree that this was a proper corner for this expansion to happen on, and I'm very much looking forward to getting into the general plan and looking at the rest of this area out there and deciding what's the future's going to be. So I'm anxious to do that. You know, it's interesting. When I was on the Planning Commission in Plain City, we drew a circle on a map, just like that star. And Kent's Market is in that circle today. And that's exactly what you do when you draw these circles. You plan on that. And of course, that's the way I view this. In my simple mind, I see that star on there and I think, well, that's where the star is. So that's where we want the commercial. All right, that's all I have to say.
Commissioner?
I've talked enough.
I've just got one last comment. You know, I respect that. Thank you. You know, a lot of times I've watched and things happen to people. I'm disappointed that some of the people have left. Because there was a comment made today about a bidding war on a piece of property. And because of situations, it fell into the hand of another family. There are situations that continue to happen throughout generations of family. We can't all control what those situations are. The fact of the matter is families have the right to do with their property in general what that is. Mr. Bell made a great comment with, we know that it's not, and I will say, and I wish, is Tim here still? Vandernack, very good. Mr. Vandernack, I've talked with property owners on all four corners. The owners on all four corners, and all of them recognize growth. All of them recognize it needs to be commercial. We just haven't described the amount. I think that growth and the people will drive that. There are things that I don't do because The growth will happen if people decide to support it. There are things that I don't support. I don't shop at certain places because I don't support it. And people out there can choose to support or not support, and that will have a direct input on what grows or how it grows out there and the growth of that. But everyone should have a say on how that works. And that's all individual rights of people. I respect the fact that each one of my children, who are adults, make different decisions than I do. I'm glad that they have the privilege of being able to learn in a free country. Because learning is wonderful. And I hope to still myself be able to continue learning. And I hope that people will allow me to make good decisions and also make mistakes, because that's how I learn. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for the last item.
Motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. 4 minutes.